Hello, I'm Dan Gibson.
And I'm Chad Dole.
And this is another video about Azraqi's book, Akhbar Mecca, or News About Mecca.
So far in this series, there have been 3 videos. First, we looked at who Azraqi is and why we bothered to publish this translation or adaptation. The second video looked at Azraqi's treatment of Mount Seir and the Amalekites. And the third video looked at Abraham in Azraqi, and especially his relationship with the Kaaba. Finally, we're going to look at a few different topics today in this video and reflect personally on our experience as we were working with Akhbar Mecca.
I would like to begin by addressing the topic of the tribes of Arabia. Over the last centuries, various authors have produced charts and maps to show us the locations of the various tribes that originated in Arabia. What I find interesting is that these maps were constructed on the basis of manuscript evidence. For instance, Azraqi tells us about Ishmael, or Ismail as the Muslim sources call him. He and his descendants lived at Mecca.
Azraqi passage 116 tells us that there were 12 sons of Ismail. Nabit and Kedar were the oldest, and we talked about this quite a bit last time. He also described how the Jurhum settled Mecca after Hagar and Ismail had taken refuge there, and Hagar gave them access to Zamzam well. Ismail married a woman from Jurhum, and so the tribes of Ismail and the tribe of Jurhum, which settled Mecca, are linked. However, in time there was friction between the tribes of Kedar descended from Ismail and the Jurhum. This friction led to a battle for Mecca in which the Kedar were defeated and the two sides made peace. This event was commemorated in Azraqi with a poem which was passed down as an oral tradition from generation to generation. Azraqi recorded it in his text and it lives on today.
There was also trouble with the Edomites, and especially with the clan of the Amalekites, who became rulers of the Forbidden House. The Jurhum overthrew the Amalekites. Azraqi tells us that the Amalekites did not follow the monotheism that Ismail had taught centuries before. A man arose among them named Amluk, and he warned them of the nations of Hud and Salah and Shoab who had perished when they turned away from worshipping the one true God.
These are just a few examples of the rich record Azraqi provides regarding the tribes. When scholars have tried to create maps of where these ancient tribes would have lived, they run into an issue. The only details we have from early writers refer to the same geographical anchor point of Mecca. So when scholars have located these tribes, they have always placed them all around modern Mecca in the Hijaz.
Today, a lot of archaeological work has been done in Arabia, and none of the tribes mentioned by Azraqi and other writers have been found in southern Arabia around Mecca. Inscriptions have been discovered that mention tribal names, but they're not the tribes that the manuscripts mention. It is interesting to note that Abraha took his army north from Yemen. In his inscriptions, they mention tribes that he conquered on his way to Mecca, but they are not the same as what the maps show us.
So what you're saying is then, if ancient Mecca is mistakenly located in Saudi Arabia, then our understanding of where these ancient tribes lived is all skewed. The map is all wrong. If the original Mecca was at Mount Seir or Petra, we should expect to find these tribes listed in manuscripts like Azraqi in northern Arabia.
That's right. By locating the original Mecca as part of Petra, the location of Abraham, Ishmael, Hagar, Nabaioth, like the Nabateans, Kedar, the Amalekites, and other tribes all now make sense. But back when the Black Stone was moved to Saudi Arabia, it began a mental shift in people's minds, and eventually they believed it all happened in southern Arabia. But there always were tribes, different tribes in southern Arabia. We know this by the inscriptions written on the rocks. So, Chad, are there any other things that caught your attention when you worked through Azraqi?
So my task with Azraqi was standardizing the English style and the spelling. Nobody wants me to translate Arabic. That's not what I was doing. And I had to do this since we had several different translators working on the text in different times, and they all wrote their English differently. And I probably didn't catch everything, and I apologize for that. But I did have the opportunity to read our edition of Akbar Mecca several times. I'm a history nerd, and I have studied history most of my adult life. As a historical document, Azraqi's work is really fascinating for me, because usually when we study history, it's not too difficult to study events and names and places, but it can be difficult to understand the traditions and the opinions of the people who lived centuries ago. Azraqi has collected all of the traditions that he could find on Mecca, and so he gives us this amazing impression about what Muslims believed about Mecca in the 9th century. He often will include traditions and his stories with isnad that contradict one another, and here and there he'll make a short little editorial note about what he thinks is credible and what he thinks isn't credible. I really love other historians like Al-Tabari, but Al-Tabari's great history of Islam is written as a narrative with few contradictions and was written for the Islamic court. It is rare to have a history which acknowledges contradictions so freely and eagerly like Al-Azraqi. I like Azraqi's approach because it gives us an impression about what people actually believed and not just what the authorities decided people ought to believe. So I'm hoping that someday I'll be able to read the rest of Akbar Mecca in English.
Don't count on it soon, at least not for me. I have too many things going on. But I want to give people a taste of what is in Azraqi, and I sincerely hope that some other scholars will take on this task with a new formal translation that includes all 4 volumes of Azraqi.
So Dan, what else are you working on?
Well, Chad and I have been very busy working on a new big project. A new full-length, full-feature documentary film. It has taken us over a year to get this far and will probably take us another 6 months, maybe more, before it is released. We have spent all our money and most of our energy on this project. I think all of the film footage has been shot now, and we don't have the funding, though, to have a whole team of people working on this, so it's moving very slowly. Chad was there during some of the shooting, and what did you think of that experience?
Well, I traveled with Dan to the film studio, and I brought along some extra books and a computer because Dan told me I would have a lot of downtime between shooting the scenes, but that wasn't true at all. We worked every day, all day, sometimes for more than 12 hours. I could recite my lines in my sleep. If you ask my wife, I probably do recite my lines in my sleep. But what I discovered is that I really enjoyed the process of filmmaking. I helped in any way I could. I wore out my boots running around. The technology and the lighting and the artistry are all quite exciting, and I can't wait for all of you to see the finished product.
I'm looking for it too, so hopefully it'll come out soon, but it will take even more time to get the translations done. That is going to be a real challenge. So please subscribe to this video series as it helps us a lot. And we appreciate your financial gifts and your prayers towards making of the film. The making of this film is a miracle in itself, and we are amazed at how God is bringing things together. We are already really encouraged and excited. So thank you for being a part of this journey. I am Dan Gibson.
And I am Chad Dole.
And this has been the last video in this series about Azraqi.